You might think that this month marks the beginning of spring in the Northern Hemisphere. If you are in crypto in North America, that is incorrect. The season you are experiencing right now is actually the crypto offshoring season. This is that special time when all the crypto projects that would normally be founded in your neck of the woods decide instead to locate themselves in greener pastures. Today, we saw an important crypto founder begging policymakers to avoid this result. I don't know if that will work, but I do think Cardano is in a better position to accommodate wherever crypto has to go next. Ready? Let's go. Today, we are going to discuss Brian Armstrong's op-ed piece, some more beautiful game footage from Pavia, some more mainstream coverage from World Mobile, and why some people are worried about Silvergate right now. If you immediately understood that this is a boat full of crypto people taking their projects offshore, or if you're finding value in these videos each weekday, please consider delegating to the Army of Spies stake pool, ticker AOS. Here's how much crypto is being chased offshore from North America. Brian Armstrong, founder of Coinbase, is writing op-ed pieces trying to, I guess politely you'd say encourage, but really he's like begging policymakers not to do this and explaining it like a lot of us would in one way, but in another way that I think a lot of us, at least in Cardano, probably wouldn't. So this article starts out, this is the actual op-ed piece that he wrote. So it starts out kind of the way you'd expect. He explains how the TradFi system, the traditional finance system, is old and ossified and slow, and it no longer fits this digital age. I think the TradFi system was born of a very analog era, and we've now shifted into a digital era. And I mean, we have some. There is a certain amount of fiat, the vast majority of it, that sort of happens on a digital basis. We're no longer handing each other paper money in most of the jurisdictions of the developed Western world. So there is this digital component, but the dollar doesn't fit a digital world like crypto does. And he points this out. TradFi is too old. Time for us to move on to something better. He says crypto is a faster, more private, efficient, cheaper, and user-controlled financial system. Then he gets into some territory that I think is kind of a mistake. It's kind of the wrong direction to go in. I think he knows this is something that would appeal to federal policymakers, but I think it is the wrong direction. He says, by embracing crypto and other forms of digital finance, the US can not only update its financial system, but also solidify its status as a geopolitical powerhouse. Of course, cringy to anybody outside the US. They don't want to hear this kind of stuff usually. The dollar has enjoyed being the world's global reserve currency for decades, but it has never been under more pressure. Debatable. I think there's a lot of sort of macro geopolitical analysts who would say this is not the case, but fair enough. His call on that, his op-ed piece, his call on that. Imagine a world in which the US issues its own USD stablecoin on the blockchain. Not only would this provide access to the dollar to millions of the previously unbanked and underbanked people, but would it also be the de facto digital currency for remittances and international currency transfers, ensuring that the dollar remains the global reserve currency both on and off chain. Here's the problem. This is where I think a lot of us, at least in Cardano, wouldn't have gone in this direction. I think the feds know this part and they're already headed in that direction. But where Brian Armstrong might be thinking of, a US dollar stablecoin that Coinbase has previously been involved in. In fact, in the very next sentence, he talks about how the United Nations Refugee Agency has used USDC. He's thinking of something like a USDC. But I think the Fed is already headed in this direction. But they're thinking about a CBDC. When they think USD stablecoin, they don't think something like USDC, like Brian Armstrong would. They're thinking, yeah, we're going to do all that. But instead of us calling it a USD stablecoin and it being on the kind of public blockchain you're probably imagining, it's going to be the Fed coin, the CBDC, and it's going to run on something you can call a blockchain if you want to, but it's going to be a very centralized ledger where we control all the nodes and we get to do whatever we want. I think it's kind of, I don't think this part, I can't imagine that Brian Armstrong would write this paragraph and think he's telling the real policymakers anything that doesn't lead them to that federal CBDC solution. If this is a problem statement and a proposed solution, I think he knows that the policymakers right now, they would take this and go in the direction of CBDC. So I don't think this part of his op-ed piece is really aimed at the true policymakers. I think a lot of us on the Cardano side of things, because I think everybody in crypto is aware of the intention of a lot of central banks to go toward this CBDC surveillance world. I don't think, I think we'd be a little bit more wary about including something like this, because even if you say the audience for this is just the general public, are they really going to know the difference between what he's actually proposing here and what the Fed is going to deliver? I think the general public will probably conflate those two notions and not really understand the difference until it's too late, until they're already in this, CBDC surveillance world where whatever privacy they have left in the fiat world is now even diminished. While I think that last paragraph might have been a misstep, this next paragraph is probably true. He says, America is at a once in a generation inflection point. We have the opportunity to be the leader in the digital currency space and reap the benefits this leadership enshrines, or we can concede our leadership role to geopolitical adversaries who are eager to take the mantle as the 21st century's global heavyweight. As other countries implement regulations and guidelines for cryptocurrency, the US risks falling behind both technologically and politically. I think all of that is true. I think the policymakers behind the current crypto crackdown, I think they would also agree that this paragraph is true, but they look at it from a sort of a complete 180-degree different perspective. I think they say, yeah, this is all true as to the digital assets we're thinking about, which are not cryptocurrencies on a public blockchain. When we see digital currency, we think CBDCs. We think the rest of this stuff is nonsense, and we'll be glad if whoever else in the world outside of our jurisdiction takes the mantle as the 21st century's global heavyweight in that category, these public cryptocurrencies, which they don't like at all. And they agree. I think they agree that this is an important opportunity to be the leader in the digital currency space. But what the digital currencies they want are central bank digital currencies. They think the rest of it's nonsense. I think he could have written this op-ed piece a little bit differently. I mean, the first part is great. He describes very well the problems with the ossified TradFi system. And then he goes on to say, hey, yeah, we should have a digital dollar and we should be the leader in digital currencies. That's all fine and dandy, but he should have also explained that those digital currencies need to be real cryptocurrencies running on public blockchains, because everything he wrote could also apply to CBDCs. And whether his intended audience for this op-ed piece are the actual policymakers or the general public, the policymakers are sort of intentionally going to conflate their CBDCs with the kinds of digital currencies he's describing here, and the public who's, mainstream public who's not a part of crypto right now, they're going to accidentally conflate CBDCs with the kinds of digital currencies that he's talking about. Because I mean, a lot of the policymakers who are very anti-crypto right now, they could look at his entire article and say, yeah, that's all true. As long as the digital currencies or digital assets you're talking about are CBDCs. Yeah, we totally agree, Brian Armstrong. We're totally following your advice here. I think he needed to draw this dividing line between the CBDC world and the actual crypto world. I mean, if we don't draw a very sharp dividing line between those two things, we're going to see a near future where somebody like an Elizabeth Warren is going to introduce a bill accommodating CBDCs and calling herself a technological innovator, ushering in a new era of digital assets. And people are actually going to believe that it was someone like her who brought them digital assets, not even knowing that there's this other type of digital assets, the kind of digital assets that we've all rallied around for the past decade. They won't even know that that was a possibility because all they'll get are central bank digital currencies. Even in the context of this future where the Fed chases all of the crypto innovation offshore, I'm still optimistic for Cardano. And here's why. Cardano was built in a different era than the blockchains in between Cardano and the number one spot. Pretty much all of those actual blockchains, like there's always, little stable coins kind of flitting in and out of the top 10, but of the actual blockchains, they were all sort of built on the premises of the last era of crypto. It was sort of like that era of crypto was more the Wild West. We're still kind of in the Wild West of crypto, but it was even more so the Wild West before. And those blockchains weren't built with this sort of like recognition that we were going to run into these kinds of barriers to the flourishing of crypto like we're seeing right now. So you've got things like USDC, very prevalent among the blockchains that are in the top 10 that sort of became big, that were populated with dApps and things, prior to Cardano. You see USDC all over the place. This is very different than some of the most prevalent stable coins in Cardano. In Cardano, you've got JED, which to me was purpose built to be regulation resistant. I shouldn't really use the word resistant, but it was purpose built to continue to exist in the face of this kind of pressure from federal regulators. JED JED is issued by a company that's outside of North America or the EU. That in and of itself is a huge leg up as far as surviving regulatory pressure in either of those two jurisdictions. Cardano also doesn't have all of these giant TVL dApps already existing on its blockchain that are based out of North America. If you think about all of the big dApps in Cardano, all of the ones that are based in North America, they could go away and there's going to be an offshore competitor who could step right into their shoes. Because we don't have this long history of DeFi where everybody in North America was going crazy and building out these monster dApps and getting a huge amount of total value locked. If all of the North American dApps in DeFi in the EVM world had to shut down tomorrow, the EVM world would be in big trouble. If all of the North American dApps in Cardano DeFi had to shut down tomorrow, there would be offshore competitors who could step directly into their shoes. It would be sad, but we've got other versions of those same use cases who could step right into those shoes. Not in every case, but in a lot of the cases, and even in the areas where maybe we don't, somebody could build that dApp pretty easily to do exactly the same thing. Part of that is because the Cardano world is so open source. And part of it is just that I think in a lot of ways, Cardano is very international. Cardano was sort of built and it grew in a way that could accommodate the kinds of regulatory pressures we're seeing right now in North America. I think the EU, obviously with MiCA, is a much greener pasture than North America. But Cardano sort of grew in a way that could accommodate the pressures we're seeing in North America. And even if we had seen the same kind of pressures in Europe, which was possible a couple of years ago, that seemed like it was possible prior to MiCA. But Cardano seems like it can withstand these headwinds better than almost any other any other Gen 3 blockchain. Cardano has a beautiful regulatory anti-fragility. Check this out. In their latest dev update, Pavia brought us some beautiful footage of their virtual world. Look at how nice this looks. If this is what it looks like when we're finally walking around in Pavia one day, I can't help but think that people are going to be pretty happy with this. I can tell you when Decentraland finally allowed people to actually walk around in Decentraland, it did not look this beautiful. The first days of Decentraland did not look this good. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that this is the way that Pavia actually looks when we get to walk around. I mean, granted, we've already been able to walk around in the cyberpunk, that sort of, smallish, limited cyberpunk part of the Central Plaza. But if Pavia eventually represents a whole world that looks like this, I think it's going to be a pretty good thing. People are very worried about Silvergate right now. If you don't know what Silvergate is, we've talked in the past how there are only a few different channels by which crypto companies can acquire a banking relationship. They need to partner with a bank. None of these crypto entities you're dealing with that have fiat on ramps and on off ramps are actually banks. They're not banks. They have a relationship with some bank who's willing to work with crypto companies. Silvergate is one of those. They have definitely been a big ally of a whole bunch of different crypto companies. And in fact, if you're using one of the bigger North American exchanges, you very well might actually be using Silvergate when you ACH in and out of that centralized exchange. So the reason people are freaked out about Silvergate right now, and Silvergate's been, I don't want to throw any FUD on Silvergate, but their name has been coming up over the last year. I'll just put it that way. So Silvergate delayed their 10K filing. And in the 10K filing, there were people have extracted certain quotes that have them concerned. And the price of Silvergate has definitely been impacted by this. So here are some of the quotes that have been thrown around. Could result in the company and the bank being less than well capitalized. Investigations from our banking regulators, congressional inquiries, and the US Department of Justice. Obviously, you don't want to see a late 10K filing unless there's some really good reason. And you definitely don't want that reason to be anything having to do with undercapitalization of the bank or investigations, especially not from banking regulators, Congress, or the US DOJ. I think this poster summed up a lot of the fears when he said Silvergate's death spiral is going to be rough for crypto. I don't think retail investors realize how much market maker money moved around quickly via Silvergate and how many crypto exchanges are banking with them. Stock almost down to its all-time low after hours. Finally, here's some nice mainstream coverage for World Mobile from Reuters. They say blockchain-based mobile network operator World Mobile aims to provide affordable internet access with the help of aerostatic balloons. They've got some nice sound bites in there from Mickey Watkins, Mr. Telecom, who if you are in the Cardano ecosystem. I think this is important. I think mainstream coverage of Cardano projects is an important thing. And we're a little bit used to it because this has happened before with World Mobile. But I think it's a good indicator of how compelling the mission statement is of a project like World Mobile. So good job, World Mobile. Looking forward to more of this in the future, hopefully. Fingers crossed. Hope you're having a great week, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.